Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well today. Let me start by asking you a question. How on earth is anyone supposed to balance working full-time, constantly learning, upskilling, getting enough sleep, looking after their health, exercising, being present with loved ones, managing a household, and still somehow having free time for hobbies? Does that actually exist? Or is it some fantasy productivity influencers invented to sell planners? Good news, it is absolutely possible. But only if you stop relying on raw motivation and start thinking in systems. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how systems thinking works, how to apply it to any big goal in your life, and how this shift can completely transform your ability to stay consistent without feeling exhausted or overwhelmed. And I'll try to make it as practical and relatable as possible, because I've used these exact principles to help hundreds of busy professionals overhaul their routines, reclaim their energy, and actually achieve the things they care about. So let's talk about why systems matter. Most people think in terms of intentions. They wake up and go, I should really exercise today. Or I should finish that online course. Or, man, I need to get more sleep. But intentions don't mean action. Intentions feel good in your head, but they collapse the moment real life pops up, when work gets stressful, when someone needs something from you, or when you're simply tired. Some people level up from intentions to plans. Now it's no longer I need to read more, but I'll dedicate 1 hour every night to reading. Or every day after work, I'll get a quick workout in. That's better, but here's the problem. Plans assume perfect conditions, and life rarely gives you perfect conditions. If you're tired or something unexpected comes up, that plan goes out the window. Then you feel guilty, disappointed, and confused as to why you can't be more disciplined. But systems solve this problem. Systems are the combination of repeatable processes that make succeeding easier than failing. They reduce the need for willpower, reduce friction, and help you take action even when you're not feeling your best. Systems work with your human nature, not against it. So, how do we think in systems? There are 3 big principles that guide this process, and if you master them, you can build systems for studying, fitness, sleep, career growth, deep work, basically anything that matters to you. The first principle is to think holistically. This is where most people fall short. Instead of only focusing on what they want to do, they completely ignore the factors that will interfere. When you think in systems, you proactively expect obstacles. You assume you'll get tired, you assume something will interrupt you, you assume you'll have days where you don't feel like doing anything. And then you ask yourself, okay, knowing that these barriers will happen, what can I do about them? Not after the fact, but from the very beginning. Whenever I'm coaching someone to build a personal system, I start by asking about the things they've already tried and why each of those attempts failed. People are usually surprised by this question. They expect me to ask what they want to achieve. But the truth is, understanding past failures is more valuable than understanding future desires, because your failures contain the blueprint of all the barriers you will face again. And no matter what system you create, these barriers have to be accounted for. This brings us to the second principle. Build for repeatability. A good system shouldn't only work on your best day, it should work on your worst day, when you're tired, unmotivated, busy, stressed, or even a bit lazy. If your system relies on motivation, it's not actually a system, it's a hope. Motivation is a bonus, not the foundation. Repeatability means designing processes with as little friction as possible. Let me give you an example. I once coached someone who was working full-time while studying for a difficult certification exam. His plan was to study every day after work, as soon as he got home. Sounds reasonable, right? Except he never managed to stick to it. By the time he got home, he was mentally exhausted, he had to help with dinner, and he just wanted to relax and unwind. So, naturally, he wasn't studying. Most people would say, push harder, be disciplined, stop making excuses. But that's not sustainable. And honestly, it's not kind. You shouldn't design a life where you have to wrestle yourself into productivity every single day. So instead, we applied systems thinking. What if he didn't go home immediately? What if he stayed at the office for an hour after work and studied there? That way he avoided traffic, avoided the temptation of home comfort, and got the studying done before the tiredness fully hit. And guess what? That worked incredibly well. But we didn't stop there. We looked at the potential obstacles to that plan too. He said that coming home later would push back the family dinner schedule. So the next question was, could the family shift dinner by an hour? Maybe yes, maybe no, but exploring the possibility is part of systems thinking. Sometimes the solution is a small lifestyle conversation away. We explored another option too, studying in the morning. But then came another obstacle. Morning study requires waking up earlier, which requires sleeping earlier, which requires adjusting evening routines. And that triggered another obstacle. His evenings were already busy and unstructured. This back and forth analysis is exactly how systems are built. You search for low-effort solutions, you test them against real-life limitations, and you keep iterating until something fits. You don't give up just because the first or second or third idea isn't perfect. You just move on to the next one. This leads naturally to an important mindset shift. When you're building a system, your job isn't to find the perfect solution immediately. Your job is to explore possibilities and find a combination that works. You solve one problem, then move to the next, and eventually you arrive at a repeatable system that works, not because everything is easy, but because each obstacle has been accounted for. Now, discomfort will absolutely be part of this process, but don't confuse discomfort with impossibility. Discomfort doesn't mean the system is bad, it means it's different, and different is exactly what you need to create new results. In fact, I've found that the discomfort of making a change is usually far less painful than the discomfort of staying stuck. Staying stuck means stress, guilt, frustration, and constant self-doubt. Changing your habits is uncomfortable, but staying trapped in your old patterns is even more uncomfortable. As you repeat these cycles of holistic thinking and repeatability testing, your plans will naturally become more specific. No more vague, I'll study every night type of plans. Instead, your system will cover contingencies automatically. If I'm tired, I will do X. If I have extra energy, I'll do Y. If I'm interrupted, I will switch to Z. And suddenly, consistency becomes easier because you're no longer depending on magical bursts of motivation. Now let's move to the final principle, peeling the band-aids. In the beginning, when you first build a system, you'll inevitably use short-term patches to help you function. Things like using timers to stay focused, taking a midday nap to recharge, drinking a bit more coffee, or relying on reminders, alarms, or productivity hacks. These are band-aids. They work, but they don't fix the underlying issues. The problem with band-aids is that they make your system fragile. If the Band-Aid isn't available, no timer, no nap opportunity, no caffeine, then your system fails. So the goal is to gradually remove the Band-Aids by solving the deeper problems. If you're always tired, the real solution is fixing your sleep. If your attention span is terrible, the solution is training your focus and reducing digital distractions. If you can only work in silence, the solution might be building adaptability. Peeling these band-aids takes time and sometimes months of habit adjustment. But this process makes your system stronger and simpler. And the act of peeling the band-aid itself becomes a new goal inside your system. For example, improving your sleep habits becomes its own microsystem. Training your attention becomes its own microsystem. And eventually the system becomes durable enough to support you with less effort. When all these principles come together, holistic thinking, repeatability, and band-aid peeling, you create a personal operating system that evolves with your life. It adapts to change. It absorbs new obstacles. It keeps your goals alive even when life throws curveballs. And it frees you from relying on motivation, which is unreliable at best. I've used this exact approach in my own life for years. It's how I managed intense workloads, big personal projects, long periods of studying, and still kept time for the gym, family, hobbies, and proper sleep. The system changed as my life changed, but the principles stayed the same. And I've seen clients do the exact same thing, creating sustainable routines, even with demanding jobs, kids, responsibilities, or predictable schedules. Now, before we end, let me leave you with the big lesson of this entire video. The moment you shift from relying on motivation to building systems, everything changes. You realize your problem was never discipline, it was design. You don't need to become a new person to reach your goals. You just need a system that supports the person you already are, even on the days where you don't feel like it. And that's the power of thinking in systems. It gives you freedom instead of pressure. Believe me, instead of constantly fighting yourself, you create an environment where success is the path of least resistance. That's all for today, my friends. I've covered a lot of information on the subject mentioned above. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below.
Thanks for joining me and watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. See you in the next one. Bye-bye for now, my dear friends.